Today's episode of Knoxville Medicine Doc Talk is sponsored by London and Amburn, Attorneys at Law, Healthcare People, Healthcare Law. London and Amburn, Attorneys at Law, are proud to support the Knoxville Academy of Medicine and its mission to continue to improve community wellness in East Tennessee.
Hi, welcome to Doc Talks, which is the Knoxville Academy of Medicine podcast. Talks in plain language about issues and health issues that affect all East Tennesseans. I'm Elise Denaney, former president of Knoxville Academy of Medicine, and I'm glad you're here joining us today. Today we have joining us Dr. Eric Penniman. He is a family physician first and also the executive medical director of Summit Medical Group, which takes care of the lives of many, many East Tennesseans. Our topic today is antibiotic stewardship. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Welcome and tell me what that is.
Yeah, it's great to be here. So stewardship, like any area of our life, we want to be good stewards of the resources we have. And we know over the last 100 years or so that we've actually had antibiotics. So they've saved millions and millions of lives, right? But we're seeing where we use antibiotics inappropriately, where we're treating viral illnesses with antibiotics, we're ultimately leading to antibiotic resistance in these superbugs that don't respond then to antibiotics. And we want to preserve the effectiveness of antibiotics by only using them when we really need to use them.
So antibiotics are only good if you have a bacterial infection. Infection like strep?
Yep, strep throat is a bacterial infection. Many sinus infections are a bacterial infection. Many ear infections are a type of bacterial infections. Pneumonias could be viral, often can be a bacterial infection, and generally someone with pneumonia we give antibiotics to.
So like we're in the winter season, so everybody gets a cold.
Yep.
Is a cold a bacterial infection?
Nope. Colds are caused by viruses, and there are well over 400 different strains of cold viruses out there. And so, the good news is every cold you get, you develop some immunity against that virus for the future, but you probably have 400 more to battle off before you're fully immune. So anyway, you may never get there, but antibiotics are not going to help your cold.
Okay. How do we take care of a cold then?
Yeah, it's whatever your grandma or your mom told you, which is, get extra sleep, reduce stress, drink extra water. Some people take Mucinex to help break up the mucus so that it drains, because the mucus draining is actually God's way of helping to heal a cold. And there is some evidence to suggest that very early on, if you get some of the zinc preparations like Zicam, that may help to shorten the duration of a cold. But other than that, I've always liked what someone told me that, if you treat a cold, it takes a week to get better. And if you don't treat a cold, it takes 7 days to get better.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, are colds contagious?
Absolutely, yeah. So just like influenza, in cold and flu season, it's super important that we're all washing our hands regularly, that we're not sneezing and coughing on one another. You cover a cough, and best way to cover a cough is to cough into your arm sleeve rather than into your hand, because when you do it in your hand and then you shake someone's hand, you just spread the virus.
Share the wealth.
Yeah, share the wealth. Oh, joy.
All right, so don't treat a cold with an antibiotic. Can a cold sometimes get a bacterial?
Yeah, so we know that there are bacteria within our respiratory tract, and they're kept in balance by other organisms. And when you get a virus, then if the openings to where your sinuses are supposed to drain blocks up, it occludes, then oftentimes a secondary bacterial infection can develop. And so sometimes a cold can lead to a sinus infection. And now we're into your area of expertise as an ear, nose, and throat doctor here.
Yeah, we see that quite often.
Yeah.
All right, so this is really interesting. So if I throw a lot of antibiotics like penicillin, amoxicillin at an infection that's caused by a virus, I'm not really doing anything at all.
No, in fact, you're causing harm. And a lot of people think that antibiotics can't cause harm. If you don't have a bacterial infection, who cares? Well, we know that it causes antibiotic resistance, but every year many people actually die from a secondary infection of the colon called pseudomembranous colitis or Clostridium difficile, which is directly caused by getting antibiotics. And so antibiotics can be harmful. It can really mess up your GI system. And so we don't want to use antibiotics unless we need to.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes can an antibiotic interfere with somebody who's on a blood thinner?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, particularly if you're on warfarin, which is the oldest blood thinner, and many patients are still on it, most medicines interact with warfarin. And I've always told my patients, if you're given a new medicine, please call me and let me know, because chances are it'll interact and it may thin the blood too much, and we need to check it sooner than later. And antibiotics are renowned for causing problems of interacting with the warfarin.
Okay, so you mentioned, thank you, you mentioned superbugs. So what's a superbug?
Well, you might hear on the news folks talking about necrotizing fasciitis, where you can get these bacteria that, because they are resistant to antibiotics, they can quickly spread through the body and cause a very painful and life-threatening illness, and they often end up in the intensive care unit, and unfortunately, a certain number of those patients die.
So if we overuse antibiotics, we might create these bugs where they don't respond to any more antibiotics.
That's right.
And then we don't have anything to fight them with.
Right, yeah. Then you're reliant on just supportive care. Yeah.
That's not good.
No. No, we like to save lives, don't we? Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, it's really good. I think it's really hard as a mom to know when I am dealing with something that is viral or when I'm dealing something that is bacterial, but my primary care can tell the difference.
Yeah, generally, that's a good strategy. So if you have questions, please get a hold of your family doctor, your internist, your primary care provider, and let us sort out, if an antibiotic is needed. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is that if a person has been a smoker their whole life, or if they have a chronic lung problem, we're much more apt to use antibiotics earlier, because in general, when you have a chronic illness, the likelihood of a bacterial infection then goes up substantially.
Right. Not everybody is the same. We're all unique little individuals. Yeah. I know I have several friends who have lung diseases, and every time they get a cold, it's going to go straight to their lungs, and then they're going to get pneumonia. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily viral, but sometimes bacterial.
Right.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, that's always hard to know when to use one.
Yep.
All right. So, let's say that somebody develops a bacterial infection, high fever, doesn't go away, then it's appropriate to come see you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want them to, because if you have a bacterial infection, the sooner we get going with treatment, the better chance we have at improving the situation, hopefully keeping you out of the hospital.
Okay. One of the patients one time asked me, if I keep getting antibiotics, am I going to develop an allergy to an antibiotic?
Yeah, and that is a possibility. That's one of the other problems of getting antibiotics when you don't need it, is every time you give an antibiotic, you're sensitizing your body's immune system to it, and sometimes your immune system develop antibodies against the antibiotic, and boom, you have an allergic rash or whatever.
And then you've knocked out one of the antibiotics that could have possibly helped you down the road, later on, down the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to get into your primary care, and you go to one of the urgent care clinics or to a minute clinic. Would you recommend that they test you to see if it's a viral or a bacterial?
Yeah, if you have a sore throat, you really should get a rapid strep test to determine if it is streptococcal infection, because if it's not strep, it's likely viral and you don't need an antibiotic. And so that's the benefit of going in, get an objective test so you know whether or not it is bacterial or not.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
What else can you tell me about antibiotic stewardship? And we're going to wrap it up.
Well, the other thing I would promote is vaccinations. We were talking about pneumonia.
Oh,
there are vaccines, both pneumococcal vaccines can be very effective in helping to prevent community-acquired pneumonia. The number one type is pneumococcal pneumonia, and we can largely prevent that through vaccination.
And pneumococcus, it's a bacteria.
Correct.
That would require an antibiotic.
Yes. Yeah.
But you won't need to take the antibiotic if you get the vaccine and prevent yourself from getting it.
Yes.
Yay! All right. And it's just 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots?
So there's 2 different ones, and it's recommended that you get both of them. So 2 different shots, 1 shot each.
Ouch. Okay. But it's worth it.
Yeah. It's a small needle.
And insurance covers it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Even
Yes.
better. All right. So there you go. Now you know about when it's appropriate to use antibiotics and why sometimes it's just not a good idea to take an antibiotic. But if you ever have questions, always call your primary care physician because they know you best. They know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So, Dr. Penniman, if we need to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if a person needs a family doctor or an internal medicine doctor and you're in one of the 14 counties in East Tennessee that we have offices, and we have 60 different practices all throughout East Tennessee, the best way to find somebody close to you is go to our website, summitmedical.com, and right up there it has a menu for locations. You can choose the county, and you can find out which doctor's in your county. You can learn about each doctor, and then the contact information will be right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And that's a wrap.
Today's episode of Knoxville Medicine Doc Talk is sponsored by London and Amburn, attorneys at law, healthcare people, healthcare law. London and Amburn, attorneys at law, are proud to support the Knoxville Academy of Medicine and its mission to continue to improve community wellness in East Tennessee.